Hey guys, Godfather of Anxiety here again. Hey, I just wanted to do a short video on why benign fasciculation syndrome can cause so much anxiety. Obviously, this is my channel is about anxiety and all of the anxiety spectrum conditions, obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, you can go through any of them. Generalized anxiety disorder and so on. But again, I've decided to include videos on benign fasciculation syndrome because, this would be my third, either my third or my fourth video on the subject. And it's because there's such a correlation between anxiety and benign fasciculation syndrome. So I wanted to kind of get at the crux or the heart of the issue as to why this is why does it always become such a source of anxiety, right? I mean, the name, I feel the name doesn't do it justice, and I'm going to get into that a little bit, but, this is supposed to be a benign condition, but as you'll see when we go through this video, that's not necessarily the case. And that's also somewhat at the heart of why it does cause so much anxiety. The first reason that it causes so much anxiety, and again, for those of you who aren't familiar with the condition, benign fasciculation syndrome is muscle twitching. And I started to have this condition around 2008. It started in my calves, and my calves every single day of my life since 2008, as far as I can tell from the 24 hours a day, my calves twitch. When I wake up in the morning, my calves twitch. When I go to bed at night, my calves are twitching. So that's where it started for me. But just so you know what benign fasciculation syndrome is, these are muscle twitches that do not have, let me get into this here. So the biggest reason why it causes so much anxiety, muscle twitches, is because if you look up muscle twitches on the internet, the first thing it's gonna show up is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, right? ALS. And ALS is one of the most insidious, evil diseases that a human being can be affected with. It's a slow, sometimes not that slow, unfortunately, but complete atrophying of all the muscles, including the muscles that keep us alive and allow us to breathe and swallow. So as soon as you go on the internet, as soon as you search on Google, you're going to see, type in muscle twitching. If it's not the first thing that comes up, it'll be in the top 2 or 3. You will see something about ALS. So that and other serious neurodegenerative conditions can also include muscle twitching. So it's going to start your mind down a path that's where, especially if you're prone to anxiety or health anxiety, it's going to ratchet it up significantly just on a Google search, right? So that's the number one reason why this condition causes so much anxiety. But when I was thinking about how I was going to do this video, there's other things about it, especially if you already have generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, any of the anxiety spectrum conditions that make it especially insidious and especially make you especially prone to it causing anxiety. Because the next reason I'm going to give on why BFS causes so much anxiety is because there is no known pathophysiology for the condition. That's why they call it a syndrome. If you hear that something is a syndrome, that's code for we don't know the pathophysiology, we don't know why it's happening. We don't know the mechanism that's causing this to happen. Another term they like to throw around is idiopathic. So people with anxiety, who already have anxiety, we like answers. We are intelligent and analytical people. We like answers. And with benign fasciculation syndrome, there is no answer. right? Like, excuse me, you can, when you research this, guys, there are lots of things that can contribute to muscle twitching that are just part of the American lifestyle. Anything from hyperventilating to the use of stimulants to not getting sleep to being dehydrated. I could go, there's probably about 10, 12 things that can cause muscle twitches to some degree. But I will argue that none of them will cause what has happened to me since 2008. I do not believe caffeine will make your muscles twitch 24 hours a day. I don't believe that. I don't even believe that you're capable of hyperventilating to the point of having your muscles twitch for 24 hours a day, right? Because once you fall asleep, you're falling victim to, involuntary, actions. So, you're not conscious anymore. So that's a no-go on that. So in other words, there is something going on and they just don't understand it. And that's not a big deal because we know there's things every day. They're finding out more things. And then, and this is another reason why you waste your time on Google, I promise you, because what they think they know today, they don't know tomorrow. And I'm not taking away from the tremendous work and advancement that's been done in the field of science or in the field of medicine. God bless those people, and they're amazing. Okay, super intelligent people working on things have led to a lot of lives being saved. So don't get me wrong on that. But they also tend to be in over their heads when they're looking at these things, right? So the human nervous system is almost incomprehensibly complex. And even neurosurgeons will do a surgery. They won't know exactly what the outcome's going to be. You can have one person have a certain amount of damage to a certain part of the brain, and they walk and live a normal life, have no issues. Another person with a very similar injury is a vegetable. So there's a lot they don't know, is the bottom line about what I'm saying here. So, because they don't understand what's causing these muscle twitches, it makes it so you can't get any of that reassurance or even just a reason why this is happening. So that for us, for people with anxiety, that skyrockets the anxiety. Because they're saying, oh, listen, we know it's not bad, but we don't know why it's happening. And somehow that just doesn't, give us the reassurance we're seeking, right? So that's another big reason why, that I think is often ignored, and just kind of glossed over. Oh, it's just too much coffee, or what's going on with me, guys? And just as a note of, being transparent with you guys, my muscle twitching's actually been up lately. There's been a lot of stress, and I know you guys are going through the same thing. So it's not like I'm looking for pity. But, life in general has been fairly stressful for the last 6 months. And I have had an increase in muscle twitches. And I've noticed that, now that I've paid closer attention, especially since 2020, noticed that as my stress goes up, generally my twitching goes up. It's not always cause and effect, but in a very general way, there definitely seems to be a correlation. So... So when you don't have a reason why something's happening and they try to pass it off like, oh, it's the American lifestyle, that doesn't, we're too smart for that, right? So I'm not claiming to know what causes benign fasciculation syndrome. I don't. Obviously, it's a hypersensitive nervous system. And I've talked with you guys about how people with anxiety disorders have hyperactive amygdalas, right? So that's sometimes why our brains misinterpret things that should be exciting or harmless as potential, life-threatening situations. So, there could be some component in that direction. But the bottom line is they don't know what causes it. And that makes us, that makes it because they don't know, that gives us less reassurance, and it makes it so we worry more about it. And we're too smart to, to be conned. If you're going to tell us, oh, it's from drinking too much coffee, or if you guys are experiencing the benign fasciculation syndrome I'm experiencing, you know it's not from coffee. I mean, like I said, I'll get more videos up of my calves when they're really going crazy, but it looks like something's going to come out of my calves on those days. And, again, that's been, let's see, 16 years, 17 years, and no loss of strength or atrophy. So, and I'll have muscle twitches in my feet and my quads. They're pretty much omnipresent now as well. They're a lot less than in my calves, but if I look at my quads or I look at my feet, every 5 or 10 seconds, I will see a twitch. So, that feeds into why we get anxious. Because when someone tries to tell you not to be worried about something, but they don't know why it's happening, is it gonna get any reassurance from that? Oh, we don't know why, but don't worry about it. It's, look, there's a lot of uncertainty in life, and part of getting better from anxiety is being able to live with uncertainty. So I completely understand that aspect of it. But this video is just to show you guys, why BFS, something that they're saying is benign and nothing to worry about, ends up being something that we worry about a lot. And the third reason I'm going to give for why it causes such anxiety is because it's very difficult to ignore benign fasciculation syndrome. I'd argue a condition of pain might be easier to ignore. Especially if you're having, which I've told you guys before, some of the symptoms now that have been filed under benign fasciculation syndrome are tingling, numbness, and then even cramps. So like when your calves are twitching so much that it's causing cramps, that's a really hard thing to just get out of your mind, and if you're having numbness or tingling, it's not easy to ignore numbness or tingling. When we're little kids and we lay on our arm, we wake up and it's, fell asleep, we don't just ignore it. I mean, we don't think we're dying, but you try to get the blood back to the limb as quickly as possible because you don't like that feeling. So, and that gets into why, it's not as benign as they intimate by the description of the condition. It's benign in that it doesn't progress, but it's not benign in its symptoms. Those symptoms aren't benign. Cramps are not benign. Trust me, if you've had very bad muscle cramps, you know exactly that is not something you're just going to ignore. And numbness and tingling, I mean, I'm in my 50s. It would be literally foolish for me to ignore numbness and tingling. I mean, those are symptoms of a stroke. So, so that's another reason why it causes anxiety. And, it doesn't make you insane or, ridiculous to have a level of anxiety with this. And then finally, this is another thing I thought of and why it does cause so much anxiety. You notice it the most. BFS is a condition you notice the most when you're trying to relax and when you're trying to sleep. I do not notice my calves twitching while I'm at work or when I'm at the gym or, maybe even if I'm watching a good movie, I don't notice it. But when you lay down to go to sleep and you can just feel your, twitching, it's harder. That's the hardest time to ignore it, right? It's like, okay, especially on the nights when it's really bad. So, but now by explaining to you guys why we have anxiety for it, I am not trying to justify the anxiety. Because the fact of the matter is, it doesn't lead to anything bad. It doesn't lead to anything that's going to permanently harm or disable you. And to worry about it is to rob yourself of precious time, our most precious commodity, right? And the whole purpose of my channel is to keep you guys from doing that. I don't want you guys to get locked in that thing. The vicious cycle of health anxiety is, it's a rabbit hole you do not want to go down. It will consume you, and it will blend reality and fiction and imagination. And pretty soon you'll be worrying and feeling things you've never felt. And guys, I'm gonna break the news to you. Once you start doing that, you're gonna notice everything. You are gonna notice everything. Things that have been happening to you, that your body's been doing since you were born, that you never noticed before, you're gonna start noticing if you actually get triggered into health anxiety from benign fasciculation syndrome. So why I made the video is to give you guys some reasons to feel like you're not insane for it causing anxiety, but I also don't want you to think that it is something that you should worry about. So this is what you do. If you're concerned, first of all, if you have any loss of function, get yourself to a medical doctor, get your primary doctor, have him set up something with a neurologist. If you're actually losing function, and not perceived loss of function, actual loss of function, then get to a doctor right away. If you're concerned about it and you think, boy, this is different, tell your doctor and have it examined. There's a lot of tests they can do without sending you to a neurologist that really can put your mind at ease. Strength tests, range of motion tests, reflex tests. Again, they're not conclusive. They don't have a crystal ball, and they can't tell you if 3 years down the road you're going to, have some neurological condition. But they can, as I've stated before in some of my other BFS videos, twitching, yes, you can have some early twitching with something like ALS where the muscle's not really dying yet. But most of the time, once it's been twitching for very long, that means the motor neurons in that muscle are dying. So what you would expect to see very soon is muscle atrophy and loss of function. And it's not going to take that long till you notice at least some of that. So anyways, if you're worried about it, go to the doctor. If the doctor tells you they don't see anything to worry about it, my advice to you is to live your life. Because these serious neurological conditions like ALS, they declare themselves. You're not going to have to wonder whether you have that dreaded disease for very long. Yes, I've read all the horror stories. I've read the accounts of people who had spine surgeries and other treatments because they didn't realize that it was, ALS early on. And, sometimes it takes 5 years, sometimes it can take 10 years. But guys, most of the time, unfortunately, and you can go ahead and look at people with ALS in the videos on the internet, and even relatively young people get that disease, and normally within about 5 years they're no longer with us, and sometimes a lot sooner than that. So you don't want, so address this with your doctor if you're worried about it. If your doctor says that things look good, trust them. Wait for something to declare itself or to be an issue to bother going, and this is my opinion, to bother going to a neurologist, because again, these are diseases of exclusion. And if you set up something with a neurologist, they're gonna do nerve imaging, and they're gonna have you come back in 6 months or a year. And I don't know, for me, since I battled health anxiety and anxiety disorder, I'd rather just, okay, so if one day I wake up and I can't button my shirt, or I have drop foot, or one of the other things where I'm definitely know that I'm losing function, then I'll make an appointment right away. And I don't want to discourage anybody from getting medical treatment, but If the primary issue is that you can't stop thinking about it, there's your answer, guys. It's anxiety. The condition is benign as far as anything serious coming of it. There are some things you can do to try to lessen it. Sleep, exercise, diet, try to keep those on point. Maybe you might have to reduce some stimulants. You might have to reduce some alcohol intake. You want to keep yourself hydrated. There are some things where you can maybe, mitigate some of the effects of benign fasciculation syndrome. I don't believe, at least in my case, those things don't make it go away, but they can have some impact on it. But for the most part, don't waste your life worrying about a serious condition if there's no sign of any progression of any loss of function or muscle atrophy. Don't worry, but don't waste your time on that. Life is too short. Life is too precious. Time is too precious. And, I'm saying this from firsthand experience. I've lost very large chunks of my life to Google searches, to, whether I was worrying about ALS or some other serious health conditions, and I can't get that time back, time that I lost with my wife, time that I lost with my children. And I don't want you guys to go through that. It's really a waste. So, yeah, again, the video is, just to kind of explain why we get so worked up about BFS. No, you're not crazy. You're not a wimp. There are some legitimate things that are disconcerting about this condition that get downplayed when you do some research on it. So I wanted to get that out there, but I also want to stress that you do not want to have BFS turn into health anxiety and rob you of your life. Because I've been there, and, you just wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy. So that's about all I wanted to cover in the video. Just touching again on the fact that, a lot of my videos, if when you listen to them, you kind of hear like maybe some self-talk or maybe like, I'm doing some therapy for myself, there's no question. Any of us that have these anxiety disorders or have benign fasciculation syndrome, you have to do this. It is good to talk about it because sometimes we don't use the rational part of our mind, the logical part of our mind when we have these mental health conditions. And when you have benign fasciculation syndrome, you have to use your logical mind. Fortunately, I have some amazing people in my life who help keep me on the straight and narrow. If they know now, they know way ahead of time if I'm, reassurance seeking, or, they know when to, call me out on, asking a question that's purely about anxiety and not really about what's going on with my health or reality. So thank you guys so much for the engagement in the videos. Again, I'll continue to do videos on benign fasciculation syndrome because it seems as though pretty soon you're going to get a definitive correlation between people with anxiety disorders and benign fasciculation syndrome. They strongly suspect a bidirectional relationship. That's exactly what I've experienced in my, so if you guys look at it, I noticed my calves twitching in 2008. I started having panic attacks in 2003. So, it's there's definitely a correlation for me. For me, it would be, I'd have to be turning a blind eye to it to not see that my anxiety seemed to precede the benign fasciculation syndrome. And then in my relapse that I had in 2020, sure enough, a lot of things, combined to make that a really difficult time. I picked a terrible time to try to go off medication. Once in 100-year thing happening. All of my everything that I do to keep my, balance with my anxiety kind of taken away as far as routines go. And then all of a sudden, a crazy increase in muscle twitching that included tingling and numbness, just, again, horrible, horrible symptoms. So, anyways, that's about all I wanted to say. Just again, thank you guys so much for the engagement. And until my next video, take care.